Welcome to our evening devotional, and we're so glad that you've joined us. And we're going to give a moment for the live broadcast to populate. Hope you're doing well this evening. We will be continuing with John chapter number 15 in the third part of this series. Hey, Sister Joan and Brother Miller. Good to have y'all with us all at once. We're going to get started here shortly, so give everybody a time to get plugged in. Sister Rhonda Breyer, Sister Tina, and Brother Leonard, and Brother and Sister Sims, Brother Harriet and Sister Vern, Sister Ruby, Sister Regina from Fort Myers, Sister Janice, Sister Stacy. Hello, 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 everyone. We'll give everybody a moment to join up. We've got a few already on here, so we'll give it just a minute. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be, hey, Sister Diane as well, we're going to be in John 15 again. So I encourage you, if you have your Bible nearby or maybe on your device, you want to look that up. I'm going to be reading from John 15 as we're going to continue our little series of devotions this week dealing with John chapter 15. Hope all of you are doing well. It's been a beautiful day today. A little cooler weather, thank goodness. I know I love that. So hope y'all have enjoyed the pretty weather wherever you've been. Sister Teresa's on. All right. Starting to fill up. Like I said, we'll give it just a minute. Sister Jane Garrett, good to have you joining us as well. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Give just another minute or two and then we'll get going. We're going to be talking about the branches this evening. Hey, Sister Kim. And some of the Miller family. I don't know if you're by yourself or if the girls are with you, but good to have y'all here. Sister Janice Wolf, good to have you joining us as well. Hope y'all are doing well as well. Well. My phone is wanting to dim there on me, my screen acting goofy. Well, we're going to get started here just a moment. We'll give just another minute or two, and then we're going to get going. John chapter number 15. Sister Jan Hammock, good to have you with us. Sister Carla, the birthday girl today, and is joining us. Sister Jan, maybe it's none of your business what's on my shirt, actually. I'm just kidding. It's nothing important. It is Cades Cove Jeep Outpost. It is a Jeep shop going towards Cades Cove in Townsend, Tennessee. Hey, Sister Rhonda, joining us. It's a little Jeep shop in the mountains in Townsend. If you go, one of the ways you can go to Cades Cove, if you're familiar, it's at the end of Weirs Valley Road, and they just sell all sorts of things for Jeeps and, accessories, that kind of thing. It's just a Jeep shop. We pass it every time we go to Cades Cove, and we stop in there about 4 times a trip. We go through there and talk to the owners. We've got to know them and the managers that are there pretty well. And anyway, it's just a neat little place to stop. Well, let's get going here. We've given it for Sister Linda Dean. Good to have you joining us as well. Let's get going here in John chapter number 15. And we have dealt with, should I say, the husbandman on Monday. On Tuesday, we dealt with the true vine. And this Thursday, today, we are going to deal TMI, Sister Jan, you asked what was on my shirt. You said you couldn't read it. It says Jeep Outpost, Cades Cove Jeep Outpost. You wanted to know. You're the one that asked. So not TMI. You don't need, it's not too much information. You want to know what my shirt said. So there. Don't ask if you don't want an answer. But we are talking about the branches tonight. And just a moment, getting notifications on my phone from the district. Talking about the branches. We've talked about the husbandman, we've talked about the true vine, and tonight we move to the branches. I told you there's going to be 4 elements to this particular devotional series this week. 1 is the husbandman, 2 is the true vine, and 3 is the branches. So, let's read from John 15, and hopefully you have your Bibles handy, and I'll just read the first portion. I'm not going to go through all of it, obviously. Jesus said in verse 1, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. That's kind of where hey, Brother Matt, this is kind of how we dealt with the first 2 devotions out of this text. The true vine and the husbandman. The husbandman is the owner. He's the one that planted the vine. The true vine is what produces the fruit. I'll come back to the whole dynamic in a minute. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Remember, and I'm going to deal with this a little more in detail tomorrow evening about fruit, more fruit, and much fruit. There is an obvious progression and an increase as to what the husbandman is expecting out of my life and yours. Hey, Sister Linda Childress, good to have you joining us as well. So verse number 3. Now you are clean. Don't miss this. You are clean through the word that I've spoken to you. What does he mean by that? He doesn't mean like an atonement, redemption from your sins. He's saying that you have been exposed to the truth. You have access to the truth. You are clean through the word. Verse number 4, abide in me and I in you. The branch cannot bear fruit of itself. Now remember, tonight we're talking primarily about the branch, about the branches, should I say. The branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, and no more can you except you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abideth in me and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. Hey, Sister Cindy. For without me you can do nothing. Then he says in verse 6, if a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. Verse 7 is my favorite verse out of these passages. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done. It shall be done unto you. I love that passage. Now, I want to talk to you tonight about the branches. Now, if I had to really kind of, and I try to put things in a way to where we can remember them, to where they're easy to connect the dots, if you will. And On Monday night, we talked about the husbandman, and the key word, does anybody remember the key word from Monday night dealing with the husbandman? Put it in the comments. I want to test you real quick. Does anybody remember the key word that we dealt with Monday night that dealt with the husbandman? What was the one word that I said is kind of the theme, the key to understanding the husbandman and his relationship to us? I'm going to wait on somebody to put it in the comments before I go forward. We will do a little class participation. Nope. Sister Jane, that is not it. Monday night, we dealt with the husbandman. Nope, Sister Linda, that's not it. Sister Rhonda Breyer's got it. It is ownership. Sister Joan Williams chiming in about the same time. Sister Harriet and Brother Vern chiming in, and Sister Janice Wolf chiming in. Ownership. Sister Jane Garrett, we got wonder. Wonder's hip. Sister Jane Garrett, I don't know what Wonder's hip is. I don't even want to go there. I'm not sure what Wonder's hip is. No, it's not leadership. Monday night, we dealt with the husbandman. The husbandman owns the vineyard. And so the husbandman is an owner. So the element we dealt with Monday night was, yes, ownership. Ownership. Now, Tuesday night, we dealt with the true vine. Hey, Sister Peggy. Monday night, we dealt with the husbandman, and that was about ownership. Tuesday night, we dealt with the true vine, Jesus, and the key word there was what? Sister Kim Miller says leadership, and others had mentioned that about the first one, which it was wrong for Monday night, but it was right for Tuesday night. So the key word for Tuesday night for the true vine is leadership. Yes, some of you are getting it, chiming in. We talked about ownership. It was about how we must understand the Father owns everything, and we are responsible, accountable to that Father, to that husbandman. Tuesday night, I'm just tired this evening. We dealt with the true vine, Jesus Christ. We dealt with the element of leadership and how he is leading the charge. Hey, Sister Kathy Eddins, good to have you with us as well. We are branches. We follow Jesus. So the element, I won't go back through all of it, was leadership. Hey, Sister Linda Foster, good to have you with us as well. Leadership. Monday night was ownership. Tuesday night was leadership. And now tonight, this Thursday night, we deal with the third element of John 15 that I'm wanting to deal with, and that is the branches. The key word that I want to give you that describes or embodies the branches is a very familiar word. We've got ownership, leadership, and now it comes to the branches, and the key word is discipleship, of course. Ownership, leadership, discipleship. Now, that is an easy way just to try to give these elements a little theme or a little key word that can help us kind of put the pieces together of what Jesus is telling us here. Now, in John 15, when he says, I am the true vine and my Father is the husbandman, he says, I may be the vine, but I answer to my Father. If you'll remember, Jesus said, I do nothing except what my Father does. I am here, as a matter of fact, and I've hit on this in recent weeks and months, even did various messages. Jesus said, it's not my will, but thine be done, Father. When he was there's several times. When he was on the Mount of Transfiguration, the Father's voice was there, and the Father's voice said, this is my beloved Son, hear him. Whenever Jesus was baptized back in the River Jordan, and the Father's voice said, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. And at that moment, the Father is recognizing that he has a son in this earth, as simple as that sounds. But if you'll remember on Tuesday night, hey, Sister Pam, good to have you with us as well. On Tuesday night, when I dealt with the true vine, Jesus, I talked about from Psalms 80, how it talks about, Jesus said, I'm the true vine, which means there was another vine. The vine that God planted in the earth, hey, Brother Leon, was Israel, who was called a vine, but they failed. But Jesus, they were only a foreshadowing of Christ to come. Jesus said, I am the true vine. Now, so we've got the owner of the husbandman, we've got the true vine, the father, the owner, the husbandman, planted his son in this earth. Jesus admitted multiple times he was here as a representative of the Father. He was the embodiment of the Father. He is the Word made flesh. Hey, Sister Shirley. And he came to this earth. The Father planted him like a vine, the true vine. Hey, Sister Betty. And so now tonight, we look at the dynamic of the branches. We have to really understand the whole dynamic that is going on for us to even understand or have a glimpse into what God is expecting out of you and I as the branches. Now, so we've got ownership, the husbandman. We've got leadership, the son. We've got leadership, which is the true vine. Then we've got the branches, you and I, disciples, which embodies the idea of discipleship. Now, I know a lot of people, and there's a lot of great curriculum and books written, and I don't take anything away from it. But so please don't misunderstand me. But there are a lot of folks who, I want to find a way to word this. They like to break down elements of the Christian church into, usually it's 5 elements, worship, fellowship, ministry, discipleship, evangelism, and they try to boil things and divide them and compartmentalize them into those 5 areas. That's okay if you're trying to develop a strategy for reaching or developing the body. I don't have anything against that. But the part that I do have a problem with, hey, Sister Pittman, good to have you with us. Hope you and Brother Pittman are doing well. The problem I have with this 5-fold compartmentalization, if you will, of the church operation, worship, evangelism, fellowship, and all of that stuff, is that rather than breaking it all down, I believe all of those elements are encompassed in the idea of discipleship. A disciple, if we are truly, as a matter of fact, Jesus never said go make converts. He said make disciples. For someone to be a real, I'm not talking about just someone that professes to be a Christian. I'm talking about someone who is a real devoted disciple of Jesus. A disciple, you never find Jesus going through with his disciples, showing, exemplifying, illustrating, teaching them how to demonstrate multiple areas of Christianity. He taught them to follow him. Now, hey, Sister Donna, I may deal with this on Sunday. The Lord has really been pouring something into my spirit about Jesus as the way. And so I'm not going to get into that in any depth, but I want to say this. Many times we say, okay, well, we've got to teach people how to worship. We've got to teach them how to evangelize. We've got to teach them how to fellowship, give them opportunities for that. We've got to disciple people. We've got to find out what our ministry is individual, all of these different elements. But I want to suggest to you that all of those elements fall under the mandate of being a disciple. You are not a disciple of Christ if you and I are not following his footsteps and doing as he did and as he instructs us to do. Jesus was absolutely a worshiper. And so as a follower of Jesus, a disciple of Jesus, we are to be worshipers. Now, where do you get the idea he was a worshiper, Pastor? Well, for one, when the devil tempted him, he tells the devil, hey, you're only to serve the Lord God, and him only shalt thou worship, shall you serve. And he combines and he intertwines those two words, worship and serve. He evangelized. He preached the kingdom of God. He showed people, talked to people about eternal life. All of these elements. Now that we come to that understanding, and I just want, I'm not against other ideas or curriculum or thoughts and books and teaching, and there's great things out there that deal with multiple elements of our Christianity. All I'm saying is all of them fall under the umbrella of being a disciple. That's what we must be, is a disciple. Now, so having said that, being a disciple is not just saying I belong to Jesus. And Jesus was and is the master of illustrated sermons and of giving maybe not a physical illustration, but even a symbolic or a imaginative illustration. What I mean by that is he could talk about an object or a scenario when he told parables and draw your mind into this whole diorama, if you will, of what he's talking about. He could give you word pictures. He could give you these ideas that sprung up the truths he was talking about. And what I mean by that is, like this one, for us to understand what being a disciple is, hey, Brother Shannon, we've got to know what he's talking about being a true vine and the Father being a husbandman and you being branches and you producing fruit. Let's stop and think about this for a moment. So he says, my Father's the husbandman, I'm the true vine. The Father represents, or it demonstrates basically ownership. The true vine, Jesus, that exemplifies leadership. The branch, which is what you and I are, branches, we are to model discipleship. So let's think about the imagery that Jesus is giving. You've got a vine, it has a root, it is planted, it grows and it spreads, and it has branches that go everywhere. Now, why do you plant a vine? Why do you cultivate a place and have a vineyard? One reason, and one reason only. For this type of vine that he is talking about, he's not talking about just some ivy that you want to cover a corner of your house to look cool. This vine is a fruit-producing vine. The only reason you would plant this kind of vine is to get fruit off of the end of those buds, off of the end of those branches. Here is one of the most dynamic things in this story. The husbandman plants a vine. The vine is what produces fruit. The branch is just the conduit. All the nutrients and all the elements to produce that fruit are in the DNA of the vine. Cut the vine and the whole thing dies. Cut me off of it and it hardly harms it at all. Now, the fruit you would have gotten out of my life won't be there, obviously, but you can sever the branch and the vine is okay. But if you sever the vine, everything dies. The husbandman is without fruit, the vine is without purpose, and the world is without the fruit that it could have had. Now, the branch, he said, without me, you can do nothing. A branch, if you cut it off the vine, left to itself, it will die. There are no other options. You may want to use it for firewood. You may want to use it for whatever, make a wreath out of it, but it's still dead. It will not produce anything. Now, so let's break this dynamic down. The owner, the husbandman, plants. The husbandman plants. The husbandman planted a vine in this earth. His name is Jesus. And he planted that vine, Jesus Christ, in this earth for one reason. One reason. Why? To get fruit out of it. He planted that vine for one reason, to get fruit. Now, The husbandman planted the vine. Now let's take it to the next step. The true vine, Jesus, produces what's needed for the fruit. The husbandman planted the vine. The true vine produces. Branch doesn't produce by itself. The branch doesn't have the resources. The branch isn't connected to the ground to get minerals and moisture. The branch is a conduit. The branch is only there to propagate what is going on in the DNA of the vine out to the intended product, which is the fruit. You and I, Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. That is why he says in verse 7 that I told you was one of my favorite verses was this: if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will and it shall be done. That doesn't mean I can conjure up any whim of a desire or a Santa Claus shopping list or a Santa Claus Christmas list and say, okay, I'm asking of you, Lord. No. The contingency is, if you abide in me, you can ask what you will. In other words, if you're connected to the vine and you know why you're there and you understand that you're only a conduit, I'm only a conduit to see that what the vine produces gets propagated out there. If I do that and I know why I'm here, he said, you can ask whatever you want and it'll be done. Why? Because I'm in line with the vine. That's a good catchphrase. Let's just be in line with the vine. I mean, it sounds corny, but folks, that's what he's asking us. He said, my Father's the husbandman. I'm the true vine. You are the branches. Every branch in me that beareth fruit, the Father purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. You know what he says? He's saying, if there's a little dead sprig coming off of you, it ain't doing anything, I'm going to cut that off. If you've got relationships in your life that don't need to be there and they're not producing fruit for the kingdom, God has a way of severing that. You've got hobbies, activities, not necessarily sin, but if they're getting in the way of the fruit he wants out of your life, he's got a way of severing that. Now, so let's continue with this thought. The husbandman planted the vine. The vine produces the resources for the fruit. The branches, you know what our job is? Our job is only to take what comes out of the vine. Our job, if the husbandman's, his influence in this story is that he planted the vine. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That's him planting the vine here in this earth. The husbandman planted the vine. The true vine produces. The branch doesn't produce fruit. But I was looking for a word that would continue this thinking and this kind of outline and what would best embody the process. The Father planted, the vine produces, you and I project the fruit. You've got the planting, the producing, but you've also got the projecting. Thank you, Sister Rhonda. I appreciate it. Good to have you with us. So, let me say that again. The husbandman plants the vine. The vine, the true vine, Jesus, produces. That's the only way we have fruit. It's not because we endeavor to be a quote-unquote good Christian or to be a moral person. None of that. There is no morality, true morality, outside of a relationship with Jesus. Now, God has put a conscience in people. But that conscience can become seared, it can become deteriorated, and people don't know where the morality comes from. You try to talk to them, well, I don't believe in God. There's no absolutes, and you know that's a whole other debate. But there is no absolutes outside of God, obviously, because he is the standard. So therefore, men that don't believe in God don't believe in absolutes, even though that's ludicrous. But anyway, there's no morality outside. I can't produce fruit or be anything holy as a branch. He said, if you don't abide in me, unless you abide in me, that is the only thing that gives you hope in your life. Without me, he said, you can do nothing. The Father planted it, the Son produces it, But you and I, the branch, project. What do you mean we project? I don't mean as a noun, a project. I mean as a verb, we project the fruit the Father intends. It is our job as the branches to project the fruit of the Holy Ghost, the fruit of Jesus Christ, out to a world out there, which is ultimately fruit that the Father needs and wants. So, let me give you this real quick. Our job is to project the fruit that the Father's looking for. Now, underneath that, I want to give you two elements too. So if you're taking notes, I want to give you two things. As a branch that is here to bear fruit, we have two primary in this line of discipleship. Remember, the husbandman is about ownership. The true vine, Jesus, is the element of leadership. And then the branches is the embodiment of discipleship. So, having said that, there are two things that we must be always aware of and that we must be, should I say, involved in. Two things. Influence and increase. As I read John 15, the two overarching ideas that I get out of John, the first part of John 15 at least, when Jesus is talking about the vine and the branches, the overarching themes or ideas that I get out of that is influence and increase. If you'll remember when we read, and I won't go back there, you can go back and read it or catch Tuesday night's devotion. In Psalm 80, he talked about that vine that God brought out of Egypt, planted, and it grew. It took roots, put roots down. It reached into the river, and its branches spread out. It was a shadow to the nations. And what I was telling you is that vine is intended to have influence that will reach the span of the whole world. Vines are a very interesting element. You know, trees, bushes, things, yes, they will continue to grow, but a vine grows a little bit differently. Once it starts running, I mean, you can plant something here, and that vine can be way down there before it's all over with. But the beauty of it is that if it's, my grandfather, he farmed quite a bit after he retired as a carpenter, and he did watermelons. We used to have to go, all of us cousins would ride with him, jump in the back of the truck, would go over to one of his fields, and would pick watermelons, you know, and peanuts and everything else, but we'd pick watermelons, and you know how watermelon vines are and all that. Well, you know, if you plant a watermelon vine and it produces fruit close to the root there down the vine, and you go down 25 feet and you get a watermelon, if it's a mature vine, you get a watermelon down there, it's still a watermelon. It's not producing squash down there. It's not producing cantaloupe or something else. It's producing whatever that vine is. And no matter how far you and I, no matter how far God stretches us, the one element he is looking for is that we're still producing what Jesus is. Whether it was, now get this has so many applications. Whether it was 2,000 years ago in the upper room on the day of Pentecost when Peter stepped out and preached and thousands were saved, or whether it's the year 2020 and we're facing a quote-unquote global pandemic, it's still supposed to produce Jesus. That early church produced Jesus when they were standing there in the height of the day of Pentecost, or when they were under the jail practically in the bottom cellar of the dungeon. It still produced Jesus. It doesn't matter how far down the line it gets. If Stephen's drug outside and he's stoned by the very religious people that claim to be looking for the Messiah, even when he's being stoned, he looked up and he saw Jesus standing at the right hand of the throne, and watched. It just blows my mind. And Stephen, who did not walk with Christ in the days that he was on this earth. He came into that church somewhere after Pentecost, or at least around in that time. We don't know exactly when he entered it. Was anointed and laid hands on to become one of the early deacons of the church. But yet when he started preaching Christ, and the Bible said that Stephen was a man full of faith and power, filled with the Holy Ghost. When he started preaching Christ, they drug him out. He preached to them a whole message from the Old Testament, and they gnashed on him with their teeth. They were furious that he dared to say that they were not saved and needed a Savior, needed forgiveness. And as they were stoning him, he looked up, he saw heaven opened, and Jesus standing at the right hand, and they started stoning him, and he said, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. Where have I heard that prayer before? That sounds remarkably close to what Jesus prayed when he's hanging on the cross. Right before he gives up the ghost, he said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And you've got a true vine planted, and down the road, you've got part of that vine that has run through time to Stephen. Hey, Brother, Sister Pritchard, to Stephen. And he is being stoned for Christ. And he has the DNA of Jesus enough to pray the same prayer that Jesus prayed on the cross at Calvary. That, my friends, is what being a branch is all about. The two overarching ideas that I told you that seem to flow through John 15, the early verses of John 15, are influence and increase. When you have a vine, people sometimes will plant them. They'll put them up on higher trellises to give some shade underneath as well. But that vine is going to grow, and as long as you prune it properly and you keep it properly, it is going to reach way beyond that initial root. Influence. Jesus, when the Father, remember, the Father planted a vine named Jesus, his Son. That true vine produced the fruit the world needed: everlasting life, redemption, atonement in his blood. The Father planted, the Son produced, and he wants us to project that out into a lost and dying and a dark world. Now, what is that? That is influence. That vine should be having the same effect on the world today that he did over 2,000 years ago, if we are disciples the way we claim we are. That Jesus said, greater works than these shall you do. I go to my Father. The vine has been planted, but the branches are supposed to be embodying and projecting the DNA of the vine. Are we doing that? Influence. And the second idea under this element of the branches, if you will, is increase. That vine is supposed to increase as we let the Father prune dead areas of our lives. We are supposed to increase. Now, think about this. The vine grows, the branches extend to extend the influence of the vine. Okay? That's the influence. But if you think about this, every branch that goes out of that vine, I don't know how to describe this necessarily. Let's say you were to take that vine and you were to take it 6 feet up from the ground, and somehow you were able to peel all the bark off of the outside of that vine. This may seem weird, but just hold on to me. You were able to peel all of that bark off in one piece, and you laid it out and you measured it. You measured that. Well, let's say that vine runs out 25 feet in every direction. Let's just suppose you could peel the bark off of every branch that goes out. And now add that up, and let's see what the surface area, maybe we're going back to middle school mathematics here or whatever, what the surface area of that vine would be. By those branches, and just hold on with me a minute, this is the best way I know to think about it in my mind. When those branches grow out and extend the influence of the vine, the branches not only influence We're not only extending the influence, but we are increasing the surface area of the vine, thereby giving more opportunity for fruit to be produced. Do you want to know why angels in heaven rejoice every time a lost person comes to Christ, every time that a lost person is found? You know why angels rejoice? Do they rejoice just because you're not going to hell? Maybe that's some of it. I can't deny or dispute that may be part of it. But I believe the main reason that the angels rejoice, that there is rejoicing in the presence of God over one lost person, I believe that rejoicing is stemming from, and no pun intended, stemming from the fact that heaven, all of heaven just realized that there's one more branch that Jesus can be demonstrated through. There's one more life that can tell about how good God is. Remember the man of Gadara that was filled with enough devils to drown 2,000 hogs. Jesus delivered him. He was radically saved. And Jesus started to leave because they were all, the people were all scared to death and they wanted him to leave. They didn't understand all this weird witchcraft, sorcery, whatever was going on. They didn't understand it. They were pagan. And the man of Gadara that was delivered, when Jesus was about to leave, he said, "Hey, I want to go with you." And Jesus said, "No. I want you to go back to your people and tell them what good things God has done for you." Maybe that the man of Gadara, he would say, "But I've been living out here in the tombs for years, demon-possessed. I have no education. I haven't been in a Bible school. Matter of fact, I've only met you, 30 minutes ago, an hour ago." How long Jesus was on that seashore with him, I don't know, but it was at least a matter of only hours. I hadn't been to no Bible school. I hadn't been in a discipleship program. I hadn't done anything. Jesus didn't give him a bunch of prerequisites before he could have a certificate for ministry. Jesus said, "Go tell them what good things God has done for you." God's not asking you to have some extensive, I'm not appealing for ignorance here at all. I'm just telling you that this is not complicated. All he wants us to do is be a branch. We are to project what that vine has produced into a world that needs the fruit of it. That's all. You see, in a branch, we use the illustration a lot about being a vessel for God, and the Bible does. I'm not taking away from that. There's a lot of different illustrations about what truly demonstrates a Christian life. So I'm not taking anything away from that. It talks about vessels, but we are not called only to be a vessel. To me, I feel like just a vessel, at least in our modern minds, gives the idea that we're just kind of a bowl with a lid on it, that we're just put something in us. We're one of the canisters that you keep sugar in or something. We're just there. If God needs us, we're there. There's something valuable. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, all of that. But I don't believe he's called us just to be a closed-ended vessel. He has called us to be a conduit. That's what a branch is. A branch is a conduit between the root, the trunk, and the fruit. We are to be a conduit. That's all. He's not asking you to have it all together, to figure it all out. He's not asking you to have some sort of degree or document that says you learned something. Sometimes that's the quickest way to make people ignorant. They trust in some book learning or some head knowledge, and that cannot replace heart experience. Again, I don't make an appeal for ignorance. I love to study. I study. I've got classes I'm doing now online just to enrich myself, not trying to get any extra degree, not trying to do nothing. I want to be a learner. Now, hey, Sister Pam Lloyd, good to have you with us. So I'm not making an appeal for ignorance at all. I'm just simply saying, boil everything down, and all God has really called us to do is to abide in the vine. He said, if you abide in me, verse 7, John 15, if you abide in me, my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done. Now, the vine cannot bear fruit of itself. Without me, you can do nothing. So, are we the vine? Or are we embodying the vine? Are we imitating the vine? God created man in his own image. Jesus is the vine. We are the branches. We are to be in the image of the vine. We are to be a representation of the vine. I hope you are. I hope that as you take this to heart, pray over these things. And again, I'll just break them down very quickly. The husbandman, the issue on Monday night was ownership. He owns the vineyard. We're responsible and accountable to him. 2, the true vine, Jesus Christ, embodies or exemplifies leadership. He is the leader. We follow him. He is everything we need to aspire to be. We follow in his footsteps. We allow the Spirit of God to conform us to be like him. Thirdly, tonight we're dealing with the branches, you and I, the disciples, and the key here is discipleship. And the elements of discipleship are to influence and to increase. He said, I want you to have fruit, more fruit, and much fruit. We are increasing the surface area that Jesus can produce fruit with. Hope it's a blessing to you, and if it is, share it with somebody. Lord willing, tomorrow evening I'm going to come back and we're going to deal with the fruit. It is an aspect of discipleship. It is an aspect of the branches, but we're going to take it even one step further tomorrow evening. I also encourage you to make sure you join us Sunday morning, 10:30. As I said at the beginning of this devotion, there is something God has really been poured into me. If you didn't catch last night's service, I encourage you to go listen to that. As we've been dealing with his namesake, we dealt with the Tower of Babel last night about them building a name for themselves and why that had to be judged by God. I encourage you to go back and listen to that if you've not heard it. There are some things in there I believe that is so fitting for our time. We better have discernment. We better have discernment in this hour, folks. Everything that professes or names to be good or even to be Christ is not. Folks, let's have discernment in this hour. We're living in a world that doesn't know the top from the bottom. It doesn't know up from down, left from right. There's no bearing. There's nothing substantial in most of the people's lives around us. So when something like COVID happens, people lose their sanity. They lose their hope. My hope in our society, my hope isn't in our structure or in our way of doing things. My hope is in Jesus. If that means I sit here and preach to you online as long as we can, we're going to do that. Doesn't mean we're not getting back together in the building. I believe it is very much the will of God for us to be back together. If he hasn't returned yet, we are going to be back together in a building. Does it have to be a church building? No. We may have to do like so many are doing around the world. We may have to break out and start having small churches at everybody's house. None of that doesn't matter. We've taken things to be sacred that are not necessarily sacred. All I'm saying is we're going to be back together. We're going to be back together in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But folks, my hope is not on whether or not I can go sit down in a restaurant or not. My hope is not on whether I can go this place. Are there some conveniences I'd like to see us get back again, or that the ones that we do have I don't want to lose? Certainly, because we're creatures of habit, creatures of comfort. But that's not where my hope is. In this hour in which we're living, folks, let's make sure our eyes are on Jesus. Be the branch and produce the fruit. And he'll say, well done, good and faithful servant. God bless you. We love you. We miss you. Praying for you. And if you need us, let us know. Take care. You're very welcome, Sister Jane. You're very welcome, Sister Rhonda.